She's fighting. Huh? What?
Says she's fighting.
No.
This is Jimmy Allan. He just discovered his wife's body in the basement of their home. 18 minutes earlier, Jimmy had placed this call to 911.
Okay, what's going on there?
She's in the basement. I pulled her up. I tried to give her CPR. I pulled her up.
The dispatcher instructed Jimmy to keep giving CPR while several units rushed to the scene. Officer Horn was the first to get to the house, and pay attention to this. When the officer walked into the basement, he found Jimmy performing CPR on his unresponsive wife's body, wailing hysterically, which is ironic because he had been completely silent before the officer made his presence known.
Police department, police department.
Hello, help,
Yes.
please.
The officer examined Amy, and she didn't have any injury except for a very faint mark on her neck.
How long has she been down? Do you have any idea? Do you have any idea?
Give me more than about 20 minutes.
Okay.
When emergency responders arrived to take over, Jimmy became hysterical, wailing loudly. But Horn noted that he never saw any actual tears. After a while, Jimmy composed himself. He stayed on his feet, observing carefully. The calm would settle in. Then the wailing would start again.
You want to come upstairs with me real quick? Okay.
As you can see, Jimmy appeared calm as he climbed the basement stairs. But seconds later, he snapped, taking it out on a bowl of chips. Confused by the shift, the officers turned their attention to him, questioning him about the events that led up to the discovery of his wife's body.
Did she make any statements at all?
No, dude, the first thing.
Jimmy gave the officers a quick summary of their night. At around 6:30 p.m., the couple dropped their daughter at her high school football game and headed to a local bar where they had a drink. On their way back home, the two had an argument that led to Amy getting out of the car and walking home while Jimmy left with the car. According to Jimmy, after Amy got home, she went into the basement. He said he tried to check on her, but she started swearing at him, so he went upstairs to watch television. Still not satisfied with how the argument ended, he said he went to check up on Amy again.
Was I just irritated and I didn't hear anything, so I went back down and checked on her and she's
Does Amy have a history of anything like this? Nothing in her background at all?
ever.
Okay.
The officers found it unusual that Amy would let things escalate this far, but no one appeared more shaken and distraught than Jimmy.
I'm hoping I wake up, dude.
Suddenly, one of the paramedics ran to the kitchen and told Jimmy that his wife was still fighting, making it clear that she was not dead.
She's fighting. Huh? What?
Says she's fighting.
No.
Jimmy clearly wasn't happy about this news. The paramedics were able to get a faint pulse, which meant Amy was still clinging to life, soon after which she was rushed to the local hospital. On Jimmy's side, his response caught the officer's attention right away. Soon after, Jimmy went to put on a shirt and called his daughter to inform her of the situation.
We had an emergency. Don't go anywhere. There's an emergency. Don't go anywhere. I'll talk to you in a little bit.
During the phone call, he was very calm, not telling his daughter any detail and appearing to have the situation under control. But here's the crazy part. After ending the call with his daughter, he called his parents and he appeared to be in absolute distress.
Oh, I don't know what to do, Mom. I don't know what to do. Oh, this is terrible. I gotta talk to the cops.
Just like before, when he cried while performing CPR on his wife. Now, too, there wasn't a single tear in his eyes, even though he was wailing at the top of his lungs. Once the dust settled, the officers went back to continue their investigation, and something immediately caught their attention. The ceiling were very low. With the ceiling barely over 7 feet and Amy at 5 feet 6 inches, the basement felt too cramped for her to have been able to do that. The investigators wondered how Jimmy's story held up, but for now they decided to head back. When Jimmy's father called Amy's family 14 hours later, he told them their daughter was dead even though Amy was still alive and on life support. Amy's family went to the police, insisting she had no reason to take her own life and urged them to investigate further. During the investigation, it was discovered that Amy had a child, Caleb, when she was very young, and he had been living with her new family until he turned 17. But Jimmy's obsessive and disturbing behavior eventually drove him to move in with his grandparents. The evidence stacked heavily against Jimmy. Given his abusive and controlling nature, an attempt on his wife's life wouldn't have been shocking. But the investigators still needed to determine one thing: his motive. But before they could, they received tragic news. After 3 days of being completely unresponsive, Amy was taken off life support and pronounced dead. With a possible homicide on their hands, the authorities pressed on. They turned to Amy's cell phone for clues. Her texts with Jimmy revealed his controlling behavior in full. He had been tracking her every move, frequently sending messages asking why she was at certain locations. Investigators also discovered that Amy had been seeing a man named George on a few occasions. Perhaps Jimmy had found out, and it might have fueled his anger. Strangely, when Jimmy was questioned on this, it was shocking that he had no idea.
What was your knowledge of her affair?
I don't think she had an affair. To my knowledge, I have no idea. I wouldn't think it was possible.
There was a lot of stuff that she had tried to delete there, but, I mean, we're talking, telling this other guy she loves him.
I think that you're bullshit, but...
I'm not. I'm not going to lie to you today, and I haven't. So
I'll just tell you right now, I don't believe it.
He couldn't believe that, despite monitoring her every move, he hadn't discovered this. In a final attempt to get a confession, the detective asked Jimmy to take a polygraph. Jimmy agreed, insisting he was innocent throughout. In the end, the results were inconclusive, leaving the detective even more uncertain about his involvement. Even after reviewing Amy's autopsy results, there was still no proof that anyone else was involved, leaving the authorities with more questions than answers. Seemingly at a dead end, the investigators combed through every piece of evidence, including body cam footage. That's when Officer Horn's comment about the low ceiling sparked an idea. A forensic engineering lab was brought in to simulate Jimmy's story about that night. Months of preparation, testing, and analysis followed, and the results were definitive. In that situation, her feet would have been able to touch the ground, making it impossible for her to have succeeded. This also confirmed that her death was a homicide. On October 16, 2020, Jimmy was charged with 1 felony count of open murder. At this point in the investigation, it appeared Jimmy had completely moved on. In fact, he even had a new fiancée, and their wedding was just 5 days away. But before they could tie the knot, Jimmy was arrested. After he was booked into jail, they sat him down and went over his charges. Jimmy was told he could contact the investigators if he had any questions, and that's when Jimmy said something unexpected.
If you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of us, or they can contact us. Okay?
That's how you sleep at night. Oh.
Well, I guess I don't understand that question.
Okay.
In September of 2021, 3 years after Amy's death, his trial began. The prosecutor kicked off the opening statements. She said that her team was confident that the evidence would point the jury to a guilty verdict. In a new approach, the defense attorney portrayed Amy as unstable and addicted to alcohol. When it was time for the defenses to call witnesses, nobody expected who was called. Shockingly, it was Ashley, their daughter, the one they had dropped off at the football game, and she was testifying against her mother.
Did you notice anything from your vantage point that was a problem that you behaviors or issues that you saw when your mom was drinking alcohol?
2 things. Yes, my mother overindulged in alcohol frequently, and she became intoxicated very easily and frequently as well, which would cause her to be not herself at all. She would be meaner and more violent.
3 years ago, she defended her mother.
Is there a history of the fighting or arguing or anything like that? Nothing ever? Okay.
Claiming that even though her mom was a deeply introverted person, she had always been emotionally stable. But on this day, her story completely changed. The defense also brought in their own expert. He pointed out there was minimal bleeding in the neck muscles, no petechiae, and no signs of defensive type injury. Based on that, he believed Amy's death wasn't caused by anyone else. The defense also argued the prosecution's theory was nothing more than speculation, and the fact that Jimmy had no defensive injuries was proof to that.
Anyone puts you in a chokehold, you're going to scratch the you-know-what out of his arms. Because you're fighting for life, you're fighting for that air hunger, and you're trying to stay alive.
She was not talking to her family. She was isolated. She didn't have a job. She was socially anxious. And that is not to beat up Amy Allan. It is to tell you that she was living sort of a double parallel life. And we believe the fuse was lit. And we had, unfortunately, isolation, drinking, odd behavior, the guilt of a very graphic and long-term affair, unbeknownst to Jimmy and his daughter, that ultimately led to her very sad and tragic death on Friday, September 14th of 2018.
With both sides done presenting their cases, the jury took over. About 6 hours later, they returned with a decision.
You say upon your oaths that you find the defendant guilty of the lesser offense of second-degree murder.
After this verdict, Jimmy didn't seem like someone who was wrongly accused. He simply stood up and walked around the courtroom, and when it was time to be booked into the jail, he waved goodbye to his family. On October 21st, 2021, Jimmy was sentenced to 20 to 45 years in prison in the Michigan Department of Corrections. He currently resides at the St. Louis Correctional Facility and will be eligible for parole in the year 2040.